Welcome back. This is Attorney Nicholas Hicks, and this is part 4 of surviving criminal charges. The information that I'm going to provide you today is for informational purposes only. It is not designed to or intended to be legal advice. You should contact your attorney licensed to practice in New York State to see how this information might apply to your circumstances. Now, the last time we left off, we were talking about how to communicate effectively with your lawyer and how to protect your rights while incarcerated and how to protect your information. Today I want to spend a few minutes with you about traffic stops, automobile stops, because automobile stops are probably where the majority of warrants are executed, where the majority of arrests are made. And it's important to understand how to handle traffic stops, the things that you might encounter, and what your rights are and what you should be aware of. To begin with, in New York State, with the exception of checkpoints, for example, sobriety checkpoints, where everyone is being stopped and asked questions or asked for identification. That aside, police cannot stop an automobile unless they have what we call probable cause. And probable cause means that it has to be more than just a gut feeling that something is wrong or illegal, or they suspect something. They have to have actual knowledge that you committed some offense, whether it's a traffic offense, you didn't use your turn signal, you were speeding, you were driving unsafely, etc., or that you or your automobile may fit the description of someone who may have committed a crime in that area. The automobile is the same automobile, the same color, and it fits the description of some crime that has occurred. Unless probable cause exists, an automobile cannot lawfully be stopped. Okay? Now, that's the law. Of course, the reality is that automobiles are stopped all the time for illegal reasons. We've heard terms such as driving while black. And I've seen, with my own eyes, I would say driving while white. I've seen white people pulled over in predominantly black neighborhoods and questioned about where the drugs are or what's in the car. What are you doing in this neighborhood? So I've seen it play out both ways. So police officers obviously don't always follow the law. So if you're pulled over, here's some things that you ought to know. For safety reasons, if you are stopped, you should obviously come to a full stop on the side of the road, or if you feel unsafe, you should perhaps slowly continue until you can get to a well-lit area or an area where there's people. Stop, obviously put it in park. If there's any tents on your windows, you should roll them down immediately. Not just because the tents might be illegal, and the officer's probably already seen it if you have illegal tents, and maybe that's the probable cause as to why you got pulled over. But you also want to roll them down because, and I've had that situation, you tell the officer, I put the windows down for officer safety so you can see in the car. They appreciate that, and sometimes it goes a long way. But if you have tents, roll the windows down. Keep your hands on the steering wheel, both hands, and don't move your hands until the officer directs you to do something, which is typically, may I see your driver's license and registration. At which time you should then carefully go to wherever those items are and give them to the officer. Now, the thing that you must remember is, from a practical standpoint, it's not a good idea to ask the officer a lot of questions. And now, there's a difference between rights and power, and this is important to understand that. And this is sort of the gist of what we're going to talk about today, because dangerous things can happen anywhere, especially in traffic stops when you encounter police officers. You have to remember that police officers are human beings. They're not machines. They have feelings, right? And if you begin to lecture the police officer about wanting to know why you were pulled over and you don't have probable cause and I know my rights, there's a real good chance that that encounter is going to turn out poorly for you. And even though down the road you may be victorious, look at all the changes that you've had to go through, the money you've spent, the lost time from work. Maybe you've even been injured. God forbid, maybe even killed. What you want to do, and remember the title of this is Surviving Criminal Charges. So this would be surviving a traffic stop, okay? You don't want to lecture the police officer. I mean, your lawyer, if it goes that far, knows what the law is. That lawyer is there to protect those rights. You want to survive it. So your hands are on the steering wheel. You're asked for identification. You give the identification to the officer. Now, if the officer says to you, may I search your car? You should tell the officer no, politely. No, I don't give you permission to search my car. And you shouldn't conduct a conversation about that. Now, you may say, well, I don't have a problem with the officer searching my car because I don't have anything to hide. Sure, fine. That's a mistake, or it could become one. Because assuming that people have been in and out of your car, even, obviously people you never know what somebody may have left in the car. Anything is possible. You give permission to search that car, and let's say a small amount of marijuana is found in the back seat. You were giving your buddies a ride somewhere, and he had some marijuana and it fell out of his pocket. Well, guess what's going to happen when he finds that marijuana? You're going to jail. You had no idea the marijuana was there. So it's never a good idea to give an officer permission, because the reason he's asking you for the permission is because he doesn't really have probable cause to search your car. Because if he had it, he wouldn't ask you permission. He'd take you out the car, he'd cuff you, and he'd search the car. And sometimes they do anyway without probable cause. But if he's asking you permission, it's because he doesn't have it. You shouldn't give it to him, whether you think you have something to hide or not. If he says to you, well, why don't you want to give me permission? Say, because, that's my right, officer. I don't want to be stopped. I don't want to be searched. I want to continue on my way. You can even say, may I continue, now that I've given you my license and my registration, if I'm not being charged with anything, officer, may I continue on my way? Now, that's very important to ask, may I continue on my way? Because if he says to you no, that means that you are in custody. And your lawyer will explain what that means to you later on. But if you're in custody, that triggers a series of rights. Okay? If you are not in custody, then you're free to leave. So asking the officer over and over again, sir, am I in custody or may I leave, is itself triggering legal issues. And again, it's a nice way to do everything. Don't be a smart aleck. Don't get loud. Because again, that officer has a gun on their hip and a license to use it. It's all about surviving the encounter. But again, by simply asking the question, officer, may I leave now? May I continue on my journey? It triggers certain events, legal events that could become important to you later on. Now, assuming that the officer has probable cause to stop the vehicle, if the officer then, if you match the description of somebody who's just committed a crime, or the vehicle does, he's allowed to ask you questions. You don't have to answer him, but he's allowed to ask you those questions. If, on the other hand, he suspects that you're intoxicated, he can take you through the field sobriety test, etc. Now, a car gets searched under a couple different scenarios. One, we just talked about it, you make the mistake of giving consent, or if your car is impounded, that is, in most cases you were arrested. The car is towed away, and they do what is called an inventory search, and they go through the car. Then, of course, they find something in the car that's illegal. It's chargeable to you. But again, in order to be stopped, there has to be probable cause. Now, a lot of us give police officers probable cause all the time. We have illegally tinted windows. I've been guilty of that. We're playing the music too loud. We're driving erratically. There's broken taillights or other kind of vehicle issues. All these give the officer probable cause to pull you over. So if you don't want to be pulled over, then you have to make sure that that your car meets inspection, that you aren't committing any offenses that would legally warrant the officer to pull you over. That doesn't mean they won't do it illegally. You can't do anything about that. But certainly don't give them probable cause to pull you over. Now, I want to wrap up today with just talking about a couple things that happen in traffic stops that are important to understand. You should be very careful about who you take on as passengers, or if you're a passenger, whose car you're getting in. Because if you're stopped and if that car is searched, if drugs are found in the car or a weapon is found in the car and no one takes responsibility for it, chances are everybody in the car is going to get arrested and charged for the possession of that weapon or those drugs. There is something in the law called a presumption. It's a legal fiction. It's make-believe. And what it says essentially is everybody who is in close proximity to the gun or to the drugs, they have dominion and control over it. It's theirs. Now, obviously, that gun doesn't belong to all four passengers. The drugs probably don't belong to all four passengers. But everybody's going to get charged with it. So it's one of those situations that is very dangerous, and it just applies to guns and drugs. Be very careful of the automobile that you're in or who you pick up as passengers, because if you're pulled over, everybody can get charged with possession of that weapon or drugs. So thank you for listening. I hope the information was useful. I will see you soon. If you enjoy what we do, please go on to YouTube, our YouTube channel, subscribe so that you get automatic notifications. Tell other people about us, like it, share it, and use the information. Again, I'm Attorney Nicholas Hicks. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.